Welcome back to the Elle-Sera podcast, and today's guest is Simon Keegan from the Business Insider. If you've not heard of the Business Insider, it is what it is. It's a business magazine, but he's done a lot more things than that, and he's had a wild and wonderful career, which we're going to get into right now. Hello, Simon.
Hello, Alyssa.
Nice of you to come on the pod.
Thank you. We're doing swapsies today, aren't we? Because normally me interviewing you.
Exactly. But no, it's you're an interesting guy. You've had a wonderful, varied career.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of stuff. Good stories to tell. So I thought you'd be a really interesting podcast guest, actually. So I'm going to start from the top, which was kind of, you started life as a journalist.
I did.
Where did you begin life doing that?
So, first of all, I went to college. I did my English, did my media studies, and I did a course in journalism, which was sponsored by the local paper. And I thought to myself, I'll do this. They'll give me a job.
Yeah. So
I did that, left college. Nobody wanted to give me a job because I didn't have any actual qualifications.
Right.
I didn't have an NCTJ or did you do all that?
I did my NCTJ, yeah.
So I didn't do that.
Right.
See, I didn't think you had to.
You actually don't need to.
No, well, I know that now. So nobody wanted to give me a job. I tried all of the local papers. This is in like the Wigan area.
Right.
Tried Wigan, Chorley, Bolton. I really stretched far and wide. Yeah. So I gave up, and my dad said, why don't you just get a job somewhere? And, then at least when you've got some experience, prove you're employable, that kind of thing. So I got a job selling mobile phones.
Nice.
And then one day, the MD came in and said, can you type? And I said, yeah, one finger.
Yeah.
And he said, go down that corridor, go and help our editor. And I'm like, what do you mean, editor? And he said, I own a couple of newspapers. And basically it was, instead of... Back then with mobile phones, you had to go through like credit checks to get them. And everybody in Wigan was just failing their credit check because, people who were on the dole would ring up wanting a phone and stuff. So somebody said to him, you want to target professions who don't fail credit checks. Doctors, police, lawyers, So he's advertising in all the trade papers. He's advertising in Police Review and the Teacher's Guardian or whatever it is. And then somebody said to him, for all what you're paying for these adverts, it would be cheaper to print your own paper. Right. So that's what he did. He set up Police Guardian, Brigade Guardian. He employed the ex-editor of the Bolton Metro or the Bolton Evening News to edit it. So I sort of said to her, I really want to be a journalist, little 17-year-old me. And she's just kind of like, yeah, never mind, just do that typing, And then eventually she trusted me with something. It wasn't as disastrous as she expected. And then she gradually just started training me and then said to the mobile phone guys, I'm keeping him. So I worked with her for 3 years, and she kind of trained me as a reporter, as a sub-editor, a little bit on page design, and kind of learnt my craft there. And then I headed into the big city.
The wonderful world of tabloid journalism.
I did.
Well, this is a question that always gets asked of me, and I've got millions of stories I can tell, and I have done on plenty of podcasts and in talks and stuff now. But were you ever put in any, what's some of your most memorable stories from the time at the tabloids?
At the tabloids? It was just I think it was just like a crazy time. I mean, interviewing people like Shaun Ryder from the Happy Mondays.
Yeah.
What a handful that guy is. Interviewed Bez in a cafe in Chorlton, and he's telling me about his bees. Things like that. Going to parties with the Stone Roses and stuff like that. I think it was that kind of stuff. I always like the Showbiz, which considering I'm a business journalist now, you would think that's really far away from showbiz, but ultimately it's just people, isn't it? It's just interesting people, interesting characters with a story to tell.
And also that's kind of, showbiz is what sells. You want to do front of the book stories. You want good stories.
Yeah.
That's why I was always attracted to journalism because, well, I don't know, my boss thought you'll be all right at parties. So, so I used to there's a Man United party, send Alyssa.
Yeah.
There's a this going on, send Alyssa. Do you know what I mean? Ronan Keating's cheating on his wife, send Alyssa. So So yeah, that's kind of.
But that's what's lost nowadays, isn't it? Not you going to parties. I mean, you know, the reason why your boss thought you would be good at the party is because of your ability to interact with people.
Yeah.
And for the most part, that's kind of like a dying art in journalism now.
Yeah. Well, it is. And do you know what? All I'm trying to do at the moment is hire a journalist. That's all I want. I've put it out there. I've contacted loads of people from the News of the World who used to work at the News of the World, because I thought, if you've worked at the News of the World, you'll be a killer. That's what I want. I want A-team players. I'm sick of seeing team players. Not that I've got any, but I'm sick of even getting CVs through from C-team players.
Yeah.
But if you've worked at like top level news like that, and you've cut your teeth there, and you've worked to that pressure, and you can spot those stories, and you've been in uncomfortable situations, and you've had to go very far to try and get that story, which is kind of what they were up to at the News of the World, then I'm pretty sure you can sit and write some compelling copy and narrative and storytelling for me.
Well, you know, I worked in national papers, and people who'd worked on a national paper for 5 years who'd never left the office. I mean, obviously they went home overnight, but, you know, they'd never left the office in pursuit of a story, barely ever used the phone. You know, I remember a guy saying to me, I've got this exclusive with Liam Gallagher. And I'm like, oh, wow, how did you get that? You know, and he's like, he tweeted it.
Yeah.
Oh, how's it an exclusive then?
Yeah.
Oh, well, because we've got it up before the Sun. You know, that's not what an exclusive is.
No,
an exclusive is when Liam rings you, or Liam's next door neighbour rings you, or something like that, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And, well, I was at a press agency, which is obviously you're in the business of selling stories. So you've got to get out there.
Yeah.
You've got to make that news happen, which is absolutely not a journalist, by the way. That's not what your job is. And that's what I realised. I was like, I'm calling myself a journalist, but I'm not. I'm like a creative writer, because I'm actually thinking of the story before I've left the office, and now I'm going out to try and make this work.
Well, see, I think in some respects it is, because if you're on a local paper, you know, if you're in some sleepy little hamlet, you've still got to fill your paper with something. So if there's nothing happening, you've got to drum a bit of something up, haven't you?
I mean, the maddest things would be like, you know, I'd spot something on a TV show, and then I'd ring up like a, you know, far-right feminist group and make them go mad about it.
Yeah.
I've got one, actually, by the way. I'm going to say it, fuck it. I've got one that I thought, this is just how bonkers the world is at the moment, that I reckon I could make this fly. Maybe I can make this fly before this podcast comes out, and then we can like revert back to it. I go into Nando's and I'm seeing macho peas. And I thought, you know, the peas are called macho peas.
No. Not nacho, macho.
Macho peas, right? I thought there'll be some fucking nutter somewhere that's, you know,
offended by it. Because the peas are toxic masculinity.
Absolutely.
Right.
So I thought, why not ring up like feminist group, put it in the paper, see if I can get enough people like going mad about it, get them irate, and see if Nando's like are so pressured that they're going to change them to like hero peas or something. I don't know.
Do it.
Yeah, but like just as a test to see, this is how ridiculous the world is. That's how ridiculous. And they buckled under the pressure of doing it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But that's the kind of shit I would think of in the office. And then you'd ring up a few people and try and make it work. Do you know what I mean?
You need a bit of that creativity, don't you?
Well, you do, but I mean, I loved it and I was really good at it. I remember like there was like a scene on Coronation Street with somebody, one of the young characters, and she was in a bra for like the first time. And we rang this like children's charity or whatever, and he gave us a load of quotes about saying how disgusting it was at Coronation Street to have done this to a character that they've brought up all through these years and blah, blah, blah. You know, and then that's a nice full page in the Sun because they get to print a picture of this girl in a bra and there's a story along with it. So that's having the ability to be able to spot something before anybody else
does. That's also you using the picture of the girl.
Yeah.
While at the same time pretending to be outraged by it.
Well, I'm not using it.
No, I know
that's
you're not. But that's what they're doing, isn't it?
Of course, that's why it would go in.
Yeah.
But if you can get into that mentality. But I suppose and I don't think that is journalism really. What you're doing is you're creative, because I could drive somewhere and I could spot a story on the way.
Yeah.
You know, and that having that ability is very unique. And I realised I was good at that. And I think that's why I'm good now at creating my own news and stories and PR and marketing, because now it's all about viral hooks, isn't it?
Yeah.
Social media.
But it kind of always was in a way. You know, when we were trained as journalists, they teach you how to write the news story as, imagine you're telling it to your mate down the pub.
Yeah.
Which is the opposite of how a press release tends to be written. So, what that means is it's kind of go with the top line. So you would go in and say to your mate, hey, guess what? This guy, he's only done this.
Yeah.
They're only doing this with peas. Whatever the thing is, it's knowing what will interest people. It's understanding people, isn't it? But I think, as you say, in your efforts to recruit a journalist, the easy thing is finding people who can write. The difficult thing is finding people who can talk. And this is it's quite the refreshing thing about Insider and my job is that I have a job where I still get to see people in real life. I get to do the round tables, the breakfast, the awards dinners, and actually go out and see people. But whenever we're recruiting for a new features editor or business editor or whatever, you can always get people who can write, but it's finding the ones who would be confident enough to chair a round table. That's what's so difficult, particularly with this generation, because as we know, they don't need to talk to humans for anything. You want a pizza, it's on your phone. You want to go on a date, you find someone, you swipe left and all that.
I know. I used to get my boss, he's dead now, but I always, he was so tough on me. And he challenged me, but it wasn't because he hated me or anything. It was to make me a better journalist and give me that resilience and confidence. To go and door knock like professional footballers when they've been like sleeping with prostitutes is a very difficult thing to do when I was a 22-year-old girl, and I'm like, oh God, but I've got to go and do it.
Yeah.
And I was brave and stupid.
Yeah.
Probably. I would actually, we were going back to that thing we were talking before the podcast saying that, young men go into the army at 17, 18, 19 because they're not really as thoughtful as you are as you get older. Now, I would never go and do door knock now.
No.
You'd never. Do you know what I mean?
And you'd be thinking of how, like with a death knock,
yeah.
You're talking about some lady whose kids died or something like that. It's awful. But as a kid, as a 17-year-old, you're not as empathetic. Maybe you're not a parent yourself. It's hard. Things like that get harder, don't they?
Yeah.
But to your point there about the army, that's why the army wants 17-year-olds, isn't it? They know that they wouldn't be as good soldiers as 40-year-olds. Okay, they can run faster and all that, but they wouldn't have the strategy and all of those types of things. But they don't want strategy and empathy. They just want somebody who they can
mold,
brainwash.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's crazy. So yeah, if anybody's listening to this and you are an tabloid journalist, I'd love to employ you. I mean, I've put this shout out on LinkedIn, and then everyone's coming back to me saying, "Oh, I'm a freelance writer," and I'm like, right, okay. And then I'm like, okay, here's a little test. Literally, I just said, can you write me a little passage on why you want to work at Elle-Sera? And I'm like, immediately, as soon as they've read it, they should be coming back to me with something. That's the pace I'm looking for.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, when's your deadline? Not only did it get back to me a week later, but they're like, when's your deadline for it? I'm like, fucking, it was then. And pace and speed. I don't even care a lot of the time if it's correct. Like, we can fail forward if you're quick.
Yeah, but you can train.
Yeah.
You can train that, can't you? You can train people to write, but it's very difficult to train personality, isn't it? That's the thing.
So difficult. Yeah. But if you've got newsroom experience and you've worked at that level, then you'd be fucking amazing.
It's different though now, isn't it? A lot of newsrooms now, I think, it's like walking into a library, whereas back in the day, newsrooms were insane, weren't they?
Yeah.
Particularly at tabloids.
Yeah. So then you went the Daily Star.
I did, well, not directly. So I went to the Big Issue for a bit.
Right.
5-6 years I was there.
God.
So
really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know they had real reporters at the Big Issue. I thought people just wrote in and did stories.
No, it was good.
It's like a proper magazine.
Yeah.
Still that way.
I don't know what it's like now, but it was good. We had an editor, deputy editor, features editor, news editor. Yeah, it was a good mag.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then
I went on the local papers.
Right.
So I went to Stockport Express, Salford Advertiser, all that. They kept promoting me, which was annoying, so I got to be editor of the Salford Advertiser. So that was, there was quite a hair-raising experience. You're putting all these people in the paper for various crimes and things, and we had bars on the windows.
Yeah.
Because there was, I had gangsters threatened to shoot me and all sorts.
Oh God. Do you ever worry about that? Do you ever worry about some of the stories that you've covered or things?
I mean, that was
done?
worrying, I have to say, when one of the larger crime families in Salford told me they were going to execute me. I will admit that was slightly unnerving, but yeah.
I think about that sometimes. I think, God, do you know what I mean? Like some of the things I'd covered and stuff, and I think, oh God, would that ever come back to haunt me? I actually started sweating about it like last night or something. I don't know why. You get this like wave of anxiety and I think, oh Christ. But I'm not the one who's done anything wrong here.
No. Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
No, so
okay. So after that, then I went to a few nationals. So I did, I worked on the Star and the Express in Preston. You're from Preston, aren't you?
Blackburn.
Yeah. Same thing.
Not quite, but yeah.
So the Star and Express. Then I went over to the Mirror, and I had a good stint at the Mirror. That was
in Manchester.
Yeah, in Chadderton. Yeah, and so that was fun. Went down to London a bit, but yeah.
And like, what did you see? What was like kind of the most interesting stuff that you used to see going on? What was like the most? I know, like I can come out with about 5 or 10 stories. I know most journalists can.
I don't know. I liked it. I like the celebrity stuff, you know, and just it's just a funny times of your life. I remember like Alan McGee, Oasis's manager, ringing me while I was in the middle of changing a nappy.
Oh, right.
And you know, I interviewed him while changing a nappy, you know, that dad power. You know, stuff like just funny, crazy things like that. Doing like 3 16-hour shifts back to back and falling asleep walking across Morrison's. You know, it was more the kind of crazy things like that, really, rather than the stories are all, you know.
Yeah,
I worked on daft stories, obviously, but
yeah, okay. So, and then you went to Business Insider.
Pretty much, yeah.
And you've been there 8 years.
Yeah, I think is it 9 now? I don't know. Yeah, 2016 I started, yeah.
Right. And how is that different? What's the pace like over there? What's the focus? What's the vision?
Yeah, it's great. It's kind of, in some respects, it calls back to my early days because, you know, when I was at the Mirror and the Star and the Express, a lot of the time I was just pushing a mouse around in the office, you know. So this is going back to when I was a reporter because I actually have to go out and interview people. And I think it's nice in a way because I think sometimes people have got that approach where everything goes online and they kind of, then they wonder why nobody buys the paper. You know what I mean? Whereas I think we've got a good model at Insider. So we tend to have more long form content in the magazine. You know, it might be a 6-page feature on selling your business.
Yeah.
And so it could be different facets of that: management buyouts, trade sales, IPOs, really getting into it and giving our readers what they want, which is hearing from people like them. So if you were going to sell Elle-Sera, for example, you can speak to an accountant or a lawyer really easy. But what you want to speak to is a business owner like you who's been through that process. And you can say to them, look, you did an EOT. What was it like? And they'll be honest with you. So we want to give people that. We want to be like the business owner's friend. So it's nice in that way. And obviously, we've got the opportunity, if we do get an exclusive story or we get something kind of that won't keep for the magazine, we've got the opportunity to put it online. So we're growing our online. We've had record weeks online recently. We've launched new titles in the last couple of years. So we've launched a Northeast mag. We've launched a Southeast mag. So we're basically covering all of the UK now as well. But
all from one central place. Did it start in the Northwest?
I think it may have started in Scotland.
Right.
But then it was Northwest was major, and then the kind of Scottish one broke away for a bit and stuff. But the headquarters is in Manchester.
Right.
And so all of the kind of central stuff's there, you know, like accounts and events and all that. But all of the other magazines, the editors are on the patch.
Right.
So the Midlands mag is in Birmingham, the Wales mag's in Cardiff. So it's really important, we think, for the magazine team to be out on their patch and obviously doing the events as well.
Yeah.
And the events is a big part of what we do. And I think that's, it's so nice for me as an editor because if I do a round table, say, And so that might be, say we do a roundtable sponsored by KPMG. KPMG might say, well, we'd like to have round the table. Well, you've been to one of my roundtables, right? You've entrepreneurs like you round the table.
Yeah.
But what it means for me is instead of me interviewing one person, I'm interviewing 10 people. So for me, it's just doing my job as a journalist, except I'm kind of doing 10 at once.
Do you find that people open up as much though when you're doing 10 people as one person? And is it not a bit of a dick swinging kind of competition sometimes between different business owners?
You might get a bit of that, but I think more what it does is it creates like a community in the sense that it can be quite lonely being a business owner in the sense that, I mean, it might be different for you because your partner's a business owner as well.
Exactly.
So he's going to understand that. But if your partner was a postman and you were trying to tell him about your pressures running the business, he might not understand. And you can't really talk to your staff about everything. And so who do you talk to? But then when you meet other business owners, you get that common ground. So like the round table you came to, for example, I remember there was the guy, there was Seb from Manchester Gin was there.
Yeah.
There was Derry from Secret Garden Glamping. So even though you guys are doing really different things, there was a lot of common ground.
Yeah, we've all got the same pain points.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Marketing is always one.
Yeah, and it'll be just as difficult for them to recruit good people as it is for you.
Definitely. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's my ego. I'm thinking, why wouldn't you want to work at Elle-Sera? We're a fast-growing, aggressive, funky company. And Jesus Christ, it's cushy. Christ almighty. Do you know what I mean? Cushy job. All you get introduced to is amazing women all day long. Whether ever I'm going to like some incredible event somewhere, you're going to meet inspiring people all along the way.
You're not trying to poach me, are you?
Honestly, you should come over to join the Golden Train, definitely.
Is that what you call it, the Golden Train?
Yeah, well, we are moving as fast like a train. But yeah, so no, I completely appreciate what you're saying. It is very difficult. I was speaking to Hannah from Icy Bear. She was one of the Real Housewives of Cheshire. You should interview her.
That's not the one you were on, is it? You were a desperate Scouswife, weren't you?
Desperate Scouswife, yeah. But Real Housewives of Cheshire. But she's got an e-commerce business called Icy Bear Dental, and she does like toothpaste and teeth whitening strips and whatever. And we're at probably much the same level in our growth, and she's got kind of the same pain points. And
let's do it. Hannah, if you're watching,
yeah, well, I could definitely hook that up. But yeah, she's great, and it was just refreshing to talk to someone on a level, no bullshit. I'm like, oh, I've worked with this agency, or I've worked with them, or this is what's working for us, and this is what's not working for us. You're right. You do need that. You need that help. I am lucky I've got Danny. Because his problems, he's on a much bigger scale than me. So his problems, my problems to him are nothing.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And it's like, don't worry about it. It's kind of like refreshing sometimes. If you speak to people who've got more zeros on their balance sheet than you, they really look at your problems and they can figure it out very quickly.
Yeah.
Which is always good.
But we see that, particularly, we do things like the 42 under 42, which you're in that.
Yes.
So I just put you in everything.
I know. Well, I'm genuinely a great candidate for it.
There you go. So things like the 42 under 42, when we bring them together, and I've seen people there'll be somebody who works for a packaging company and somebody who works for like a distillery, become really good friends as a result of coming to the events. Yeah. And it's like a genuine community. And so it in some respects, it's like that thing you were saying about the mushy peas and whatever at Nando's. Where you're kind of engineering a story. It's almost in a way like a positive version of that, in the sense that you're, as well as reporting on things, we're also creating a turn of events, which is we're creating networks, we're creating the opportunity. I mean, we do like the Dealmakers Awards. That has 1,000 people in Manchester Central. And, it's just, those people won't be in a room together that size the rest of the year.
I always think with those awards, when they get too big though, because I went to one like 2 weeks ago and everyone was like, oh, what great, you're a finalist in this. It's amazing. Well done. And I was like, I haven't got hope in hell of winning it. But they were like, yeah, but it doesn't matter because, you're in the room with all these people. And I didn't speak to one person all night. I didn't speak to one person that wasn't on my table. And I'd brought all those people on my table. And I was like, this is like the worst place to network I've ever been.
I mean, that wasn't one of our events.
No, it wasn't one of your events.
I'll just say
yeah,
that.
It wasn't.
But, you know, we did. I think in some respects, it's easier to network at a round table of 10 people than it is in a room with 1,000 people. But we put networking booklets on the table because obviously you're not going to speak to 1,000 people, but there are a few people who want to see, and you can just kind of pop over. But that's the skill of the format as well, because if there's, you know, if they're doing it where it's like keynote, starter, keynote, charity, main course, and you haven't got the opportunity to do
mingle.
that. So we tend to leave like a little bit of breathing room in between so people can do that.
Yeah, there was no breathing room. The only person I spoke to was a lady from Ernst & Young.
Right, okay.
And she came over twice. And I thought, all right, wow, twice. And she was like, oh yeah, I can introduce you to this girl and this girl. And I was like, and like she's going on about these businesses. They were all £100 million businesses. I was like, well, I think I'm a bit far away from this just yet. Do you know what I mean? So I've not quite got the 100 million turnover just yet. And she was like, oh, you'll get there. And I was like, yeah, thanks.
If I was your accountant, you'd get there.
Yeah. So exactly. But I mean, I'm getting fluffed by loads of companies at the moment, which is great. Do you know what I mean? Like they're all messaging me saying, do you want to go for lunch? Do you want to do that? I'm like, yeah, of course. Why not? Because they're like, we want you to either account with us or bank with us, you know, because you're nearly there. I'm nearly there anyway. So they're all circling around me now, which is lovely. You know, great. Nice lunches.
Nice to have options, isn't it?
It is, of course.
And even nicer to have lunches.
Exactly. And then the other people who ring me on a daily basis, people just throw cash at me all the time. You know, when I first started this business, like, you know, it's so hard to get any cash. And thank God for fucking bounce back loans. I'll always think of Rishi Sunak as someone I look at fondly. But
someone has to.
I know, yeah. But without that bounce back loan, this business wouldn't be here. And what a good bet that was for the government, because I paid them thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds back. But yeah, now it's like every other day I'm getting offered cash from left, right, and centre, and I just turn it down because.
Well, that's it. It's easy to get money when you don't need it, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you just have to try and sift out who's a shark and who isn't really. That's the other thing as well. But yeah, I think it's great. What the Business Insider, I read it all the time. You quite lovelily put me on the cover.
I did put you on. It was a nice cover, that, wasn't it?
It was great. And everyone was like, oh, I thought it was going to be a big interview with you in it. But I only said about 3 lines in the interview.
I know. But there were 3 good lines. Yeah. That was the thing.
Yeah. So it was just an excuse to put a pretty picture on the cover. But I could give you loads
That's a terrible accusation, Alyssa.
Oh, yeah. Well, we all know you're back in the tabloid days.
No.
There's some fabulous entrepreneurs, though, in the Northwest that never get any coverage. They're not really asked, but I always think, like, P. Louise, my God.
Well, two of our reporters went to an event with P. Louise last week, and we did a online piece, and we did a piece in the mag. She's great.
Mega. And
she's from Denton, isn't she?
Yeah. 100 million turnover this year.
Yeah, crazy.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then the other one that I saw in the Times last week was Tatty Lashes.
Yeah.
They're up the road
They're
from
in
me.
our most exciting companies, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're Liverpool, aren't they? Yeah.
They're great.
But that's something we're doing a little bit different from what we traditionally did. So I think it's probably fair to say when Insider started, it was more like aspirational. You know, the people you put on the cover would be the 100 million turnover people. Whereas now we do a lot more like the ones to watch, most exciting companies, 42 under 42.
Yeah.
You know, to get that kind of like next generation of entrepreneur in there as well.
Yeah. Well, obviously you see a lot of companies coming through. What's like the biggest growing sector you're seeing?
The biggest growing sector? I mean, the cliche, you know, is like tech and fintech and med tech and all that. But I think it's a little bit of a fallacy. I mean, if you look at the who the richest people are in the Northwest and you look at the most successful businesses in the Northwest, it's like
manufacturing,
Home Bargains, B&M Bargains, Matalan, those types of things. And they're the big employers, but obviously, it's unsexy, isn't it, to talk about like budget retail, that's the thing. People want to talk about fintech and stuff. So I do think it's over-egged a little bit, that sort of thing.
Fashion's big in the Northwest though. Well, fast fashion's big in the Northwest.
Yeah.
Manchester's
But that's its heritage, isn't it? It had that heritage of, Liverpool had like Littlewoods and all of that. And Manchester obviously had the rag trade. And then you get people growing out of that and then evolving. And then they go from catalogues like, they're called M. Brown, to e-commerce. And then you've got like the Boohoo's and all of that type of thing. So yeah, fashion's huge.
Fashion is huge, actually. And definitely Manchester's got to be second city now.
Yeah.
London, Manchester. No one's, who's asked about Birmingham anymore? Liverpool will never get there. I don't think. It's always going to be the poor relation of Manchester.
I don't know. I mean, I was born in Liverpool, so that's
listen, so is my daughter. Of course, I absolutely hate it. I live here. I spent my life here. Do you know what I mean? I've been here longer than I ever lived in Lancashire.
You're a Scouse wife?
Total Scouse wife, yeah. But I just see so many people fuck this city through investments and stuff that never like materialise, and you know what I mean? Whereas in Manchester, there's a lot of...
I think one thing that's good in Liverpool is, I think what any town and city needs to do is, this is going to sound like one of them really wankery things people say on LinkedIn, but it's got to learn to be authentic. So, like everyone goes on about Altrincham Market.
Yeah.
That was just using a natural asset. Like Bury was a market town, so have a good market. But when you think of Liverpool, they've got the Titanic, right?
Yeah.
And they're doing Everton Stadium and everything. Why wouldn't you use those docks? The same with Over the Water in Birkenhead, which was unloved for decades. Now Peel have come in and they've got Wirral Waters. And guess what? People want to live on the river because it's nice. And they've got that view of Liverpool and everything. And it's up and coming. At what point did people forget that Liverpool...
Lean into it.
It was about being on the river, and kind of embrace that. And that's what towns have got to do, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I live in a little place called Ormskirk, which is a market town.
Yeah, I know Ormskirk.
And I wish they would lean into it more. And there's quite a few entrepreneurs around us in Orton and Ormskirk, loads of them. Loads, big floating companies, we all live in this area. And I was like, why don't we all come together to make this place like amazing?
We'll do a feature. Ormskirk wants to watch.
Well, there you go. But in Orton, we've got more Michelin stars than they have in the whole of Manchester and Liverpool put together.
Right, okay.
Got 5 Michelin stars. Like,
I'm not a Michelin star guy,
Well, I know, but still.
Got to have a Mackey's on the way home after you've been to one of them, haven't you?
But still, like that, for this tiny, tiny little place, this market town that nobody really cares about, to have all that like real foodies coming in.
No, it's nice.
Yeah, it is nice. So
you're making me hungry now.
Yeah. So you've got some books on the table here.
I have.
I'm going to turn this podcast into a bit of a history lesson now.
Yes, you are. And this is where all your viewers are going to switch off.
No, right. So you are an expert on King Arthur.
I am. So my first book was Pennine Dragon. Do you get the pun, by the way? You don't even get the pun, do you?
Pennine Dragon.
So King Arthur was called Arthur Pendragon.
Right.
Pen is Welsh for head. So he was the head dragon.
Right.
My book is about how he was from the north, Pennine Dragon.
Right.
If you have to explain a headline, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Some people will get it.
Yeah, a bit highbrow for me.
Yeah, clearly.
So, where did your love for King Arthur begin?
It was when I was a little kid. I watched some films. It was actually, Doctor Strange with Benedict Cumberbatch in.
Yeah.
In the probably 70s, there was a Doctor Strange movie that it's like watching Ron Burgundy now. It's so cheesy and everything, but I loved it as a kid. And the baddie in it was Morgan Le Fay. And I was watching it one time and my dad went, you know who Morgan Le Fay is, don't you? And I went, no. He said, it's King Arthur's evil sister. And I'm like, who's King Arthur? And he said, oh, King Arthur, you know, Sword in the Stone, Merlin, Camelot. And I was like, yeah. Because we had the Camelot theme park locally. So I'd heard of that. Yeah. I knew about the wizards and Merlin and everything.
Sword in the Stone, classic Disney movie.
All of that. Yeah. And then I watched Excalibur. I was way too young to watch Excalibur because it's got all sorts of like sex and rape and murder in it. It's like Game of Thrones, you know. But I was watching it when I was about 10 for the sword fights. And I just thought, this is amazing. Loved it. And then again, it was probably my dad said, he was a real guy, King Arthur. And I was like, what? How? Dragons, you know. And I just kind of was always interested in it. And King Arthur is one of those unsolved mysteries. So everyone is fascinated by an unsolved mystery. Some people want to know who Jack the Ripper was. Some people want to know who shot JFK. Some people want to know...
We're closer to finding that out, aren't we? Yeah, more than ever.
Apparently. Some people want to know what happened to like Lord Lucan. You know, it's just any kind of an unsolved mystery. So King Arthur is the same because there's no contemporary evidence of him. There's no written record from his time saying who he was, where he operated. What you've got is a generation after, you've got a bunch of people like naming their kids Arthur. And, you know, you've got references to him in books then.
Okay, so what century are we in?
So he would have lived like 480 to 540. So you're in the 5th and 6th century AD.
Right, okay.
So I'll tell you the backdrop to it. Okay, this is where I'm going history lesson.
Go for it, yeah.
So the Romans invaded in like in the 1st century, and the Romans were here for 400 years. And then Rome started getting invaded. So they were like, come on, lads, back home, we need you. So they took all of the Roman soldiers out of Britain. This is in about 410 AD. So obviously Britain is now defenseless. So everyone thinks, we'll invade. So the Irish are coming over. Nile of the 9 hostages is coming over. Saxons, Jutes, Angles, Picts, they're all coming over.
Vikings. Is this Vikings?
There's like 300 years before Vikings. So they're all invading. And then one king named Vortigern thought it would be a good idea to invite the Saxons over as mercenaries. So they were from like Germany. So he invited the Saxons over, and it was very Game of Thrones. They were at a banquet, and the Saxons they'd all left the swords outside and everything. They're at a banquet. Then someone gave the order, and they all pulled a knife out of their boots and slit the throats of the British. So then the Saxon invasion began. So this went on for a generation, the British against the Saxons and the Angles and the Jutes and the Frisians. And then Arthur emerged, according to the stories, as a war leader, and he defeated them in 12 battles. So he basically created peace for a generation based on beating the invaders. So that was the period. And then after he died, then they won. So that's why we're speaking English now and not Welsh. So the Britons got pushed into the kind of far corners like Cornwall, Wales, Scotland, the Isle of Man, and the Anglo-Saxons eventually took what's now England. So that's where we are. So there's always been the legends that Arthur came from Cornwall or Wales and Tintagel Castle and stuff like that. But my book argues that he was from the north. So where we get that from...
Whereabouts in the north?
So specifically, like in Roman times, the 2 most important cities in Britain were London and York. So Roman emperors were crowned in York. There's a statue of Constantine in York. So his base would have been York, but his northern frontier would have been Hadrian's Wall. So if you look at some of the names, like Arthur's final battle was Camlan, and there's a fort on Hadrian's Wall called Camlanna. There's his castle was supposed to be called Camelot,
right?
And then just outside Huddersfield, on the road where you would go from York to Manchester, you come across a Roman garrison there, and it was called Camelot.
Right.
So there's kind of linguistic things, but there was also the kind of title that he's given in the earliest literature. He's not called a king, he's called a dux, D-U-X, which is like the Roman version of a duke. And the dux did just that. They were in York, controlling the 5th Legion along Hadrian's Wall. So I kind of thought to myself, well, maybe this is where I should be looking for him.
Right.
So I looked at all of the lists of kings, because there was all these different kingdoms in Britain. There was, Devonia and Cerno and Ebroc and all of these. Basically, everywhere where there's a county now would have been a kingdom then.
Right. And
the king in York at the time was called Arthurus. And I'm thinking, well, that's the guy.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's, he's in the right time, right place. And so I wrote.
So you wrote that. And did you get any pushback?
Yeah, loads. So, so it was great.
Can you tell me about this?
Yeah.
Because I'm not equipped enough to challenge this.
No.
I'm just taking this as verbatim.
Yeah,
King Arthur's from the north. I completely believe it. I can see why you've come to that conclusion, but there must be people that are going, now, who's this fucking Simon Keegan shouting shit?
That was the type of thing that I got on some of my Amazon reviews. But no, it was the interesting thing was I got my book deal as well, by the way. So I contacted a load of publishers that specialized in like history, and got rejected. And I went on a Facebook rant, I think, or a Twitter rant about how I'd just been turned down by 10 publishers. And the guy that I knew, I think is his name Gary Johnson. He was the manager of the Stone Roses.
Right.
He said, I'll introduce you to my publisher if you want. So I said, okay. So there's this lady in Norway called Teddy Darling. And she was the ex-girlfriend of Sid Vicious from the Sex Pistols.
Right.
So she'd published books about the Pistols, the Stone Roses, all the kind of like 70s punks like Debbie Harry and Susie Quattro and all that. And I was like, do you want to publish this book about King Arthur? And I got a reaction like you. Who's King Arthur? What was this? So I said it to her, and she said, how do you think anyone's going to buy this? And I was like, well, I work at the Daily Mirror, and I've got mates who work at the Sun, and I've got, so
PR,
I'm pretty sure I can get a bit of PR out of it. So it went, one day I got invited to go on BBC Breakfast to talk about it. And I was on there, I come out, get a text off her. She goes, what the hell have you just done? And I went, what do you mean? She said, it's #1 bestseller on Amazon. And I was like, well, you can't comprehend how many viewers BBC Breakfast has got, compared to, say, readers of a local paper or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So it flew up the charts.
It did well. And then, the thing everybody picked up on, which was like half a page in my book, was the Camelot thing.
Yeah.
And so that was all the papers wanted to do, we found, the Huddersfield Examiner loved it.
Right.
They're like, we've got Camelot. They splashed with it, which for non-journalists means they put it on the front page. And then a couple of weeks later, the top Arthurian scholar at Bangor University went, I found Camelot. It's in Huddersfield. It's there. So he did that. And to be fair, the Huddersfield Examiner called him on it. They said, yeah, Simon Keegan said that a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
So we had that. And then the site, which obviously it's been there for 1,500 years, and 2 months after my book came out, they gave the site full protection, for archaeology. So you can't dig up whatever. And
shouldn't we be digging it up?
Well, no, they can't build flats on it or whatever.
Yeah. But shouldn't we excavating it?
Well, there's a golf course on it now. That's the only trouble.
Well, I thought it was protected.
Well, they can't protect the bits that's under the
Right.
golf course, but the rest, I think the bit under the car park is. So it's Outlane Golf Course if you want to go.
Right.
So
I want to go with my metal
You-
detector.
yeah, I know, right? That's
Well,
what they should be doing.
I'm
But
not
the
even-
archaeologists claimed that victory. They were like,
No,
that's down to
I would
us.
have gone on
but-
a right PR rant on that.
Yeah.
I think you need better PR.
Do you?
Yeah. Because I could turn this into a Netflix, you could turn this, into some kind of documentary for sure. Why don't you do it as a YouTube channel?
I did. One guy asked me about doing a documentary on it. There was a guy who did. Did you ever see the TV show Mind, Body and Kick-Ass Moves?
No. That I missed that one, sorry.
That was good. It's like a martial arts thing. Right. It was good. It was good. We'll come back to that in a bit.
Okay.
So that there was that, and then there was a lady that was in the movie Highlander.
Yeah.
There was a TV series of that. An actress in that wanted to do something on it as well, but it just never happened.
Well, so is there movies on King Arthur?
Yeah, there's millions of movies on King Arthur.
I'm struggling to think of one.
So there was
Sword
King Arthur.
I'm thinking Sword of the Stone
but
here.
that was when
a Disney
we were kids.
movie.
There was King Arthur with Keira Knightley in and Clive Owen.
Right, yeah.
That was like 2004.
Right.
There was Excalibur, which was Helen Mirren.
Yeah.
Was in it. There was.
So
Loads,
I've
Alyssa.
been to see the Round Table, not
It's
the real
not
Round
real.
Table, the Blag one that's in Winchester.
In Winchester, yeah.
Yeah, I've been to see that, and it's massive, and it's up on the wall and everything, and it's like got Lancelot and
Yeah.
all the names on it, and it's King Arthur and the Round Table, isn't it?
Yeah, that's
So
right. Yeah.
there was a real Round Table at some point, and did he have all these knights? Lancelot,
No, so I mean, so the thing with King
or
Arthur
are they
is so
just fictitious?
they
And
come
then-
along. The thing is, some of them were earlier, but some of them came later. So Mordred, for example, is mentioned in some of the earlier. Mordred's mentioned in the Annales Cambriae, which is like a really old Welsh history. So he's there. Lancelot and Galahad were much later. So what happened was in the earliest references, he was just like a warlord. It was just about he won this battle, he won that battle, he won this battle. And then the Welsh started telling tales about his adventures, which were kind of like the influenced by like the Irish mythology of going on quests and killing big giant cats and stuff like that. And then it got into medieval times where the sort of Norman French got a hold of it. Then there was romance brought in where Guinevere was in a love triangle with Lancelot and all that.
Yeah, that's
so.
kind of what I feel like. This could be a fiction. But
That is that stuff's the fiction, but the early the battles and the other kings and stuff, that's pretty.
Okay,
glued.
but you could steep this fiction. I'm just thinking commercially. You know
Oh,
what
yeah.
I mean? If you know
I like
all this
this.
stuff, then
Yeah.
like, why not maximize it commercially? And you could be sat in LA writing this round a pool instead of in Manchester doing the Business Insider. This is where
Nothing wrong with doing the Business
no,
Insider.
there's not. But this is where I'd be heading, right? So
Okay.
I'd be
Well,
thinking like, what's that? He's not even a very good writer. Dan Brown. You know how like he used the Da Vinci Code, the Da Vinci Code.
yeah.
It's just a fast paid.
The thing, I can't do fiction though.
No,
I tried to write fiction.
Have
just can't
you?
do- yeah.
Why not? Because it's
don't know,
fiction,
just
so you can
that-
write what you want.
I don't know. I'm just not very creative, like with the descriptions and everything. You know what I mean?
See, I'm the absolute opposite. I
Oh,
could
yeah.
never write a factual book because, well, I told you, all my journalism career was mythology.
Well, yeah, but yeah, and I'm sure your expenses were as well. But you pick up somebody had a copy of that 50 Shades of Grey, right? That everyone was
Wow.
going on about, and I'm sure
Dreadful.
you've read it.
I
It's so
haven't.
bad,
It's so bad.
and not because of the content, because of the writing.
Yeah.
It's like
It's like, genuinely, I was writing like that about 8 years old.
it's like a cure for insomnia. It's
bad.
like he stroked my elbow, not my wrist, my elbow,
Yeah.
not my shoulder, my elbow, and I'm thinking.
Yeah, it is actually.
This doesn't get to the point, and that's what journalism writing is about, getting to the point.
Yeah,
And
succinctly.
that's what I like doing, and that's why I like factual stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff like Tolkien, for example, he overdoes the descriptions for me.
Yeah.
Like the Hobbit's door. It wasn't a door like you and I would know. It was around, like, I don't care what his door was like. Just go and kill dragons.
I know what you mean. Okay, but I think lyrically, you know, you're not getting better than J.K. Rowling. She's fucking amazing.
It's the Harry Potter thing.
Well, I've actually never read Harry Potter, but I love, she writes under a man's name, Robert Galbraith, and she does a detective series.
Oh, okay.
And talk about a fucking heavyweight in literature. Like, unbelievable. Unbelievable. Talk about finesse in writing.
You'll get cancelled now for liking J.K. Rowling.
I fucking love J.K. Rowling. I fully agree with it, by the way. So I don't care who fucking says what. So, sorry for swearing so much. But yeah, I just lyrically amazing. Right. And I listen to a lot of them because Robert Glenister performs it, so you can listen to an audiobook.
Gene Hunt.
No, yeah. Robert Glenister.
Oh, is that his brother, Philip Glenister?
Yeah, Philip Glenister's his brother. Yeah. So he performs it on the audiobooks and he does all the voices and stuff. And it is just outstanding. It's like I literally cannot wait for the next one to come out. Well, like outstanding.
I can't do fiction. I can't even read fiction, you know. It sends me asleep. I literally get through a page and I just nod off.
Well, I would argue that you're not reading a good one then. Because I think you would love the detective series because it's very much...
I don't know. I think, you know, a
real murder mystery that's
but I don't care because it's not real. So I'm not interested. I want knowledge. I want to be getting to the bottom of things. I'm not bothered which fictional person killed which other fictional person.
Well, for all we know, King Arthur could have been fictional and you've just dedicated a career to it.
But at least
we have no actual knowledge.
But at least discovering he wasn't real is, at least that's a discovery.
Yeah.
If you did, which is not the case. Jesus. I'm not coming on the show again.
I know, yeah. That would be unbelievable. So, okay. So my historical fiction, like my history knowledge is absolutely terrible.
But you might
even though I did a degree in history.
Did you?
Yeah, you wouldn't believe
that. Get your money back, don't you?
It was modern history, though.
Modern history.
Like I wasn't.
There's not much of that, is there?
I was not asked about like the Corn Laws and stuff like that. It was more like Malcolm X.
Right. Okay.
Luther King.
Yeah.
So it was like American cultural history.
Like civil rights type stuff.
Loved that, yeah. And because I did well in my exams, my dad took me to New York, into Harlem. And he was like, oh my God, we got off this bus. Literally, it was like, oh my God, it was so on top. Yeah. And I just went a picture down like Malcolm X Boulevard.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I loved that. Cultural history, I loved all that. But yeah, anything like this. Yeah, fair enough. Loved the Tudors. Could really get into that. But there's got to be a bit of a human aspect to it. You've got to, you know, you've got to have that. Otherwise, I lose interest in it. So I'd like the Tudors, Tudor period, Henry VIII, obviously, great character. And sounds like King Arthur was too.
King Arthur was the dude.
I know. I love Braveheart, which is so factually incorrect.
So they say, yeah. I've not really looked into it, but yeah, I
don't want to believe it's not true.
The best bit was the Battle of Stirling Bridge, where if you watch the film, it's in a field.
Right.
Like, it was on a bridge. That's hence the name, you know.
I know. I don't want to believe that it's not. And Mel Gibson was like in his pomp in that. I watch it all the time.
It's good though, isn't it? It's a great film.
Do you think it's better than Gladiator?
Ooh. Gladiator's pretty good, but yeah, I do.
Good, right answer, because it is better than Gladiator.
Because I think the whole package, like the music and everything, and it's more... I mean, Gladiator's kind of sad when, spoiler alert, can we do spoilers?
Yeah, you can, yeah.
You know, like when his family died, it is sad there, but Braveheart does get you in the feels, doesn't it?
Fuck, I could watch Braveheart like every month.
Yeah.
And not get bored of it.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm like that with Highlander. Highlander's my favourite movie.
Yeah, no, not really watched that. Talking about movies, have you watched anything good recently? Because I'd like to say, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, I would have been a movie critic.
Would you?
I would say I got a fantastic...
Not a movie guy, you know.
God,
do you know what? I think I've got like ADHD or something, and my worst nightmare is the cinema.
Oh my God.
Yeah, honestly, just sitting there watching one thing.
Where would you take a woman on a first date? I wouldn't take anyone to the cinema on a first date.
Well, you wouldn't take them to the cinema because you're not going to talk to each other, are you? But no, the cinema, just not being able to do anything apart from focus on that film.
That's exactly why I love
It's my
it.
idea of hell.
That's why I like the cinema. Like, I won't watch a movie at home because Danny will be on his fucking phone all the way.
Yeah, that's me. I'd be.
No, I can't.
If I'm watching something like, I like Peaky Blinders, right? If I'm watching Peaky Blinders, I've got my laptop on my knee. I'm probably writing a book.
I've got an exclusive.
I'm on my phone.
About Peaky Blinders after the pod.
Oh.
I can't tell you on the pod.
Oh. Are you going to be in the next series?
No, I'm not. But I've got a good story.
Okay.
They'll definitely want to cover.
We'll talk.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean, but like Whiplash is one of my favourite movies. And I remember seeing that at the cinema and came out of that excited. I couldn't believe it. It was amazing. And I thought, you can't watch that at home and get that experience. Cordelia's nodding over there. Whiplash, incredible movie. Amazing.
What's Whiplash? I've never even heard of it.
What? It won Oscars and everything.
What's it
about a drummer.
A drummer?
Yeah. It was just the way it was shot and everything. It was like, it's intense.
I don't know. I'm like a creature of habit. Like, I tend to still like the stuff I liked as a kid. So I'll watch the next Rocky movie if there's one of them because, I'll watch the next Highlander movie or the next...
Top Gun.
Yeah, well, not a Top Gun guy, but...
Top Gun 2 was actually really good.
Superhero movies. Like, I'll always watch a Batman movie. You know what I mean? Things are... I don't want to have to think when I'm watching a film.
Who was your favourite Batman?
Do you know, Michael Keaton was pretty good.
Bale was so good.
But Bale's good.
Bale was so good.
And you know what's weird when you hear Bale talk with his own accent?
Yeah.
And he's got a London accent?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Bale's so good at Batman.
Bale is good, but Keaton was good though.
Yeah, in the 80s.
What do you think of the new
90s.
guy, the little goth guy?
No, Robert Pattinson's
Too
not doing it.
weirdy.
And they filmed a lot of it in Liverpool.
They
Because,
did, outside St George's Hall, isn't it?
Yeah, and the Liver building, because when they were filming the night scenes, because I lived right along the river, Danny went down on his roller skates. I walked, tells you what kind of guy he is.
I'll speak to him about that later.
I walked down. Anyway, they had the bat outside on the Liver building.
Yeah,
so we watched all
I remember that actually.
Filmed.
Yeah.
That was good.
Well, they did Peaky Blinders in Liverpool and Manchester as well, didn't they?
Yeah. So, it's... I can't believe you don't like movies, but...
I do like movies, but just a few. Like, I like Star Wars, things like that.
Yeah. No, I hate science
I don't want to be challenged. Star Wars is a martial arts movie.
And I was just about to bring that up, actually.
The Jedi are basically samurai.
Yeah. So, Simon, apart from being a historian, a journalist, and everything else, you're actually a black belt.
I am.
Or are you more than that? What's the next level than that?
I'm more than that. Yeah, after you get your black belt, you do Dan grades. So you get your black belt, and then 2 years later, you can do your second Dan. 3 years later, you can do third Dan. 4 years later, you can do fourth Dan. I'm seventh.
And what are you? Seventh Dan?
Yeah.
Wow. And this is something you got into as a kid?
Yeah.
And just...
Yeah.
And what are we talking here? Is it karate? Is it what?
Yeah, well, I've done everything really.
Every martial art.
I've done mostly karate and jiu-jitsu, but I've done tai chi. I did glittering boxing career. I've done stick fighting, stuff like that. But yeah.
What would you say is the benefits? Like, obviously, you're somebody who absolutely loves it. What are the benefits for like young men to be getting into martial arts?
I mean, for me, so I always liked martial arts as a kid, and I was lucky that my dad had done martial arts. So he showed me, he'd done jiu-jitsu and stuff in Liverpool. But when you're doing it with your dad, you're not getting the full benefits because you're in a comfortable place, because you're not intimidated at any point because it's your dad, if you've got a nice dad, which I did. And so it was when I joined a karate class and I got get boxing gloves on and get in the ring with that guy, and someone's roundhouse kicking you, all of a sudden you kind of like, whoa, what's going on here? And that was when, and honestly, I would say I trained in that club from when I was like 15, and my confidence overnight grew. I was like quite a shy, nerdy kid. I mean, I still am a nerd, but I was shy and not confident. And then doing karate, more or less instantly, I gained confidence, because again, when you've been punched in the face by a big black belt, all of a sudden, other things don't seem that bad.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, well, I can do that. That was fine, you know.
Yeah.
And I think, well, that teaches you stuff about yourself as well. It teaches you you're not made of glass. You know, you can be put in situations that are uncomfortable. You know, you can, and also, I was never like a team sports guy. I never liked football or rugby or any of that. And I think that I like karate because it's just you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You can just rely on yourself. And so I always like karate and jiu-jitsu together as being a really good kind of self-defense system. And I did competition and stuff, but I was never that into competition because it was always just a bit, I don't know, like, why am I doing it? Like, who cares really if I win or I come second? I don't, you know, so I get a trophy, great.
I think it's just good.
Yeah.
I mean, for like discipline, knowing your boundaries.
It's amazing.
And like I always say, if you voluntarily put yourself in difficult positions, then the everyday stress and strain of life, because you're going to have hard days, it's just the fact of life, is going to be a lot easier. And actually, we should be promoting and encouraging our kids to try and fail.
Yeah.
Not to try and not let them fail.
It's great,
there's actually a lot of growth, and if you don't test them, or the resolve is never tested all the way through life because you're constantly there like a helicopter parent behind them going, oh, it's all right, it's all right, it's all right, I'll do it for you, I'll do it. You are really bringing up inept adults.
Well, I mean, the benefits are so many. It's self-defense, and not even just self-defense as in, you know, someone grabs you and you do this wrist lock or whatever. It's more like the confidence, you know, like muggers don't pick on people who look like they can fight back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's about not looking like a victim and not looking scared. And so I think that's important. Obviously, it's fitness, it's flexibility and all of these things. But it's also, as you say, it's that determination and being pushed, like any kind of a personal trainer, really. That's why people have personal trainers. Obviously, you could do sit-ups by yourself, but it's different when someone's making you do that one more.
Yeah.
And so
or adding on that extra weight for me, essentially. And then, that making you hold it.
I know, you must be up to about 4 stone though.
No,
so,
not at all. But yeah, I love my PT. He's really good. And
it's great.
He gets an extra 25% out of me.
Yeah. And my karate instructor I would credit him more than all of the teachers at school and college put together in terms of readying me for the workplace.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And also it's very important to have these like role models.
Yeah.
And I think it's something we all need.
But you know, you get like in business.
Too many boys are on their internet now.
But this is
looking
the
at
thing,
Andrew
you know,
Tate, thinking he's the answer.
You get asked about these hashtag girl boss things, right? And about these women empowering other young women and all of that type of thing, right, as mentors. And you don't really get that for men because it's almost like a negative thing. You know, it's associated with toxic masculinity and all of this type of thing. And I think that boys do get, you know, I'm not trying to say right that straight white men are the oppressed minority. Clearly that's not the case. But when it comes to young lads, often they do feel like if they are competitive, they have to apologize for that. You know, and I don't think people should have to apologize for, like, you know, what's natural. And I think, you know, the other thing I would say is I've met professional boxers, professional UFC fighters, and they are some of the nicest people. You know, you're not going to get a professional boxer kicking off in a chippy with someone.
No.
Because they don't need to, because they've nothing to prove. They've got no chip on their shoulder. They're nice, respectful people. The people you've got kicking off in a chippy are the people who wouldn't go and train in a martial art or
frustrated
boxing
with life
or whatever.
and,
yeah. And so it does give you that, it kind of gives you that discipline and it gives you that respect for people as well. And, you know, ultimately, if you look at the history of martial arts, when Professor Kano in Japan sort of created judo, what he did was he broke down the social classes in Japan, because in Japan it was very obviously deferential society, and a guy who was a peasant wouldn't throw a guy who was nobility because he was like, couldn't do that. Whereas in judo, he said, no, you know what? You're basically all stripping to your underwear. You're all wearing the gi. And the seniority is based on how good you are. So a white belt, yellow belt, orange belt, green belt, you know. And so it doesn't matter if you're a beggar and that guy's a lord. If you're a black belt and he's a yellow belt, he's bowing to you. And so it's that ultimate kind of ability-based rather than, you know, all of these other things that people might get rewarded for.
Privilege-based, maybe. Yeah. Which is kind of, I used to feel that at like boot camps that I used to go to, because everyone stripped down to like gym kit. And it didn't matter how much money people had or anything like that. It was just on ability and how far you could push yourself in that week or whatever. Yeah, I completely agree with all that, really. And I do feel for young boys at the moment. And if I can give anybody a tip out there who's the mother of young boys who might be listening to this, I would definitely go and watch Gareth Southgate's Richard Dimbleby lecture.
He's a football guy, is he?
He is Sir Gareth Southgate. You know, the England manager.
I've not. Do you know what? I've never watched an actual football match.
Okay, well, it's all our belief in resilience.
Right.
And him just saying, you know, we need more. What can we do as a society? We need more male role models.
Yeah.
We need them to get out into community clubs because they're online, they're gambling, they're addicted to these games, they're addicted to porn. They're falling in the trap, looking for direction from people online, like your Andrew Tates, and falling into, you know, wrong habits, being too aggressive, thinking that success
and also there's much more nowadays of dads not being there.
Yeah, well,
particularly
actually,
in poorer areas.
That was actually one of the things he brought up. Actually, there was more kids with a smartphone than there were with a dad.
That's insane. Isn't it?
And that's it's worry, because that has a big knock-on effect on how they treat women as well. So actually, at a societal level, we actually need to fix this issue with young boys, because if you want to fix the issue with young girls, you're going to have to start with the boys first.
Yeah.
Anyway, very interesting and a great place to end our chat today. So Simon, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Enjoyed our chat. I've learnt a bit. I'm going to go and watch King Arthur with Keira Knightley.
And you dropped all the F-bombs and I was good.
I always do on this podcast. I must be the worst. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.